Okay, this is the first day of the competition, and what we do at this point is we every day walk through the sculptures, and one by one, we talk a little bit about what's going on in that plot. So right now I'm with Paul Hogard at plot number 1, and you can already see Paul's doing something completely different than everybody else. Paul is not using any forms at all. Paul is Paul is a purist, and this is old school. This is going way back. This is how sand sculpting started before there were ever forms. People would, go to the beach and they would just get buckets of water and just start packing the sand. Paul doesn't have any tools other than his hands, which first and foremost are your most important tools, your hands. Oh, your heart.
My heart, my head. But yes, the hands, the first tools of sand sculpture.
Yeah. The hands, you always have them with you, and you can always use your hands. But he does have a little piece of wood here that he's using to scrape and get some of that sand from other areas. And don't let this fool you, even though he's not using forms, this sand is hard. It is really, really compacted. It's obvious that he already has an elephant going on here. But when he starts putting the detail in this elephant, it will look like there is a real elephant lying on the beach, Revere beach. So already off to a good start, Paul. We're going to check back in with him tomorrow, and we'll see how much he's progressed tomorrow from this point. Okay, we're at plot number 2 with Sue McGrew from Washington. I'm just watching her and listening. Boom, another shovel, boom. Another shovel, boom. She has a pace going. That's what that is. Once you get into a groove and you get a pace going, it makes it a little bit easier. It's a nice, smooth motion. She knows how many shovels she's going to put in before she gets up inside of there and moves it around a little bit and then puts some water in. We're going to see that the sculptors, although they're all using forms, they do have different techniques. So by the time we get to the 15th sculpture, you're going to see them doing all different ways of doing their pound up. So right now we're going to let Sue get back to work, and we'll move on to the next sculpture. Okay, we're with Dmitry Klemenko from Russia, and you can see that Dmitry is putting his third form on now, but it's the same size as the second form. So the bottom form is the biggest, and they usually get smaller as you go up. But what happens here is when he's doing 2 forms the same size, it's a little bit more difficult because he not only does he have to go up and down, up and down, up and down, 3 forms high now, he has less of an edge to step on every time he steps up to get in there and move his sand around and add water. So just one of the things to consider as they're going up. It doesn't get any easier. We're with Suzanne Roosler from the Netherlands, and we talked a little bit about, she just stopped. I was going to point out about pace, that, we talked about Sue, the way she was pacing herself with the shovels. Suzanne was doing the same thing, but she also was using the pile of sand that she has here to lean on to make it a little bit more comfortable every time she threw one of those shovels up there. She's well underway, packing some of that sand in. Sometimes you don't want the sand to get too wet. It gets mushy, and if her next form is the same size as this form, you want to use a little bit more of the dry sand as you get closer to the top of the form she's filling now, so that the next form doesn't sink down into it. So she's moving right along. Here's one of the little tricks of the trade that I am going to admit right now that I just learned this week. I did not know this, and somebody was giving Deb some pointers. It is her first individual competition, so they're always, we talked about the camaraderie, they're always willing to help their fellow competitor. Both Deb's forms are exactly the same size. So what that means is when she had this form, you see these 2 pieces of wood are from the bottom form. Ordinarily, your nails are sticking out. So when she put this second form up on top, it would be raised up and sitting on those nails, and she would not get an even seal down in here, so all the sand and water would come rushing out. So Abe, great guy that Abe is, showed Deb this trick, and me too, because I didn't know it. On the bottom form, when she first did it, put a nail in here, put a nail in here, and then tipped it upside down and put 2 nails in the bottom, and then put it back the other way and took that 1 nail out of the top. So she's now put together down here with 2 nails on the bottom and no nail on the top like you have these right here. So brilliant, brilliant. Thank you, Abe, because now I have a new little trick up my sleeve too, right? Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
That was nice. This is also the first plot that we've seen that has the straps around. And what happens is you're putting tons and tons of sand into here, and the forms start to bow. So this is a safety, you know, just so she doesn't blow the seams out over here. You'll see some of the other sculptors will have the strapping on theirs as well. We were just ready to move on, and I took a look inside Deb's box and noticed something that she also has. You can see the black tape going around the edges. That's another foolproof measure, so she doesn't have any leakage out of the bottom. And what she does is she attaches the tape to the form underneath it before she finishes putting sand in it, and then she'll come around when she puts this form up. She'll come around and add the black tape to the tape that was on the bottom one, because it sticks to itself better than it sticks to the wood. So just another foolproof measure not to lose water.
Awesome.
Good job, Deb.
Awesome.
Okay, we're with Anders Petkus from Lithuania, and he's using something that we haven't seen any of the sculptors using while we were at their plots yet, and that's the tamper. Sometimes they just want to get an extra oomph of compaction, so that tamper is pretty heavy, and depending on how wet or how dry they have their sand will determine when and how often they use the tamper. And that's just experience, years of experience knowing when to use it. All right, we're with Steve Tapazio, who's from Tiverton, Rhode Island. And you'll notice first, just like Suzanne, that he uses the sand a little bit drier on the top because his next form he doesn't want to sink in, so he doesn't want to use too much water. And you'll also notice that Steve has the straps that we saw on Deb's, but Steve started his a little bit up off the ground. He took his sand pile that was given to him and he flattened out a certain portion of it, so he's automatically got a little bit more height. It's about 1 foot off the ground, but you also have to make sure that this is compacted as well. You can't just put it on top of dry sand. That sand has to get compacted as well. But it's smart. It gives him an extra foot that he didn't have to shovel up and into a form. We're with Leonardo Ugolini from Italy, and Leonardo's a very smart, strategic pounder-upper, very tired as well. A couple of things already you can see that Leonardo has going on that are a little bit different. And we use something in sand sculpting, a term that we call plot management, and he's using his plot very well. First and foremost, you don't ever want to move sand twice. You want to just move it once and get it where you need it. But the first thing I want to talk about is you can see that he has wires going across the form, and he's trying to hit me. While he stopped shoveling, I'm just going to point it out a little bit more. Right here, he has a wire that's going across the form and it goes underneath. He can use that, but that has to come out of the sculpture. So when he's done, when he starts taking his forms off, he'll be able to clip the end of that and pull it right through the sand sculpture, and it won't do any damage to the sculpture at all. He also has 2 separate pound-ups going on here, so he has strategically, there's definitely a reason why this pound-up is over here and that pound-up is over there. He's always also using his pile where he's shoveling from. It looks to me like very strategically that he might be keeping that sand around the back for a purpose. We'll follow along and see if that is the case, or he's just shoveling from the closest to him to the farthest away. So we'll check back with that, but pretty cool setup going on already. We are with Dan Belcher right now from St. Louis, Missouri, and the first thing I noticed is just walking up from the side, it's a little deceiving because from this angle it looks smaller than when you walk around here to the front and you just go, wow, that's a whole lot bigger than I thought it was from walking up from the other direction. Um, and you can also see in the back that he's probably used more sand so far than any of the other sculptors have used. His pile that he's shoveling from is pretty small at this point, and that's mainly because these forms that he's filling are so big, and he's using a lot of his sand already, which is good. I mean, that's one of the categories in the judging is the uses of sand. So they're pretty thoughtful about that as to, well, that's one of the thoughts going through their mind when they're doing their sculptures is how am I best going to use all this sand. There are also a couple of forms right in between Leo's sculpture and Dan's sculpture, so I'm not sure whose are whose. I'm guessing that this one right here is Leo's because it does have the wire going across, and it's pretty much the same shape that would fit nicely on top of the one he's working on right now. This one though, up for grabs, I'm not sure. Okay, this is Morgan Rudloff from California. She's not here right now. She might be taking a bathroom break, or she might be letting her sand settle. When you get to a certain point and you're ready to put another form on, if it's too wet or mushy, you want to let it settle a little bit. She might actually be done with that pound up. I can't see inside of it. So she might be letting it settle before she takes the form off. You can see that she's also used a combination. You can see combination of the straps and the roping. You can see how tight that is down there. There is no give at all. You can actually see it cutting into the wood right here. So that's what it does. The wood starts to expand when you put all that pressure and weight inside there. So these are full, safety measures so that the forms don't explode.